Welcome back, AKP Insiders. What's up? So, today we are going to talk about a topic that anyone is barely talking about on YouTube. I'm sure it is something that bothers the people who are just starting with wildlife photography. You know that, right? Is 600 mm a better focal length to pick, or is 400 mm a better focal length to pick for the people who are just starting with their wildlife photography journey? Well, I used to bother about it too when I started my photography. Also, telephoto lenses are pretty expensive, so it does make a lot of sense to do a proper research before investing lakhs and lakhs of rupees in such pieces of equipment. Now, here is a disclaimer before we start. I'm not going to tell you to go blindly pick either of these focal lengths, okay? To someone, a 400 mm might feel better, and to someone, a 600 mm might be better. So, I'm going to help you to find out which is your ideal focal length. Here are a few things that you need to know and think about before investing in that right focal length. First, kind of subjects that you shoot often. So first and foremost, figure out what do you shoot more. Is it birds or is it mammals? Where does your heart lie? Now, of course, for birds, mainly small birds, the more focal length you have, the better details you get. And on the other hand, if you talk about mammals, a focal length like a 400 is much ideal than a 600 in the usual cases. Well, that doesn't mean you can't do bird photography with a focal length of a 400 mm. It depends on the kind of compositions you usually go for. But for people who are most likely to shoot birds most of the time, they cover both big and small size birds, so usually using a better focal length, a larger focal length would make sense so that they get all grounds covered. Kind of images you prefer. So here is another thing you need to figure out. Are you someone who likes to shoot images where most of the habitat is visible, or you're a more close portrait kind of a person? Let's say you need to find your voice in the images. Photography is a visual language and it can express a lot through that one single click. You need to find out what is your taste. Now for me, I would always prefer an image where more of the habitat is visible around the subject, to show my viewers the kind of places the animals are surviving in. And on the other hand, you can be someone who likes to bring out more expressions, details on the face of the subject in that particular habitat. So find your taste, your voice. What is the story that you want to tell through your images? How do you wish to tell it? Do you want to go closer to the subject, or do you want to go wider in the world of the subject? Kind of places you travel more. Another very important thing you need to figure out before investing in a particular focal length is the kind of places you travel more. If you're traveling to places which are lesser known and the animals are too shy there and they hardly come closer to the cameras, you need larger focal length. On the other hand, if you travel to commercial parks more, where jungles where animals are used to the public and they are kind of found in close vicinity to the public very commonly, then a 400 or even a 300 or a 7200 would suffice. So find that out. It's not like a straight jacket formula, and it's not like if you have a 400 you have to go to commonly known places. Nothing like that. You can always put in a teleconverter as and when needed. Now I'm sharing these ideas with you so that you understand what you need majority of the times. What kind of light do you shoot in? Yes, this is one very important factor. Now 400 mm telephotos have the option of f2.8, which means double the light of 600 f4. Basically, you're getting one full stop of extra light. Personally, I'm a huge fan of shooting in low light. Most of my good shots have come out either in the golden hours or early mornings or late evenings. And in those situations, an extra stop of light comes really handy. Also, larger the focal length, more is the shutter speed that you need, because the lens get bulky and heavy. And that way also, going by the 1 by focal length formula, you would need a 1 by 400 for a 400 mm, however, a 1 by 600 for a 600 mm. Worse, if there is any kind of movement in your vehicle, or let's say if you're shooting handheld, walking inside the forest, then you need a little more shutter speed. Now this reminds me of the teleconverters. A 400 mm, if you put up a 1.4x, it's going to make it f4, and if you put a 2x, it's going to make it f5.6, which is manageable in most of the conditions. However, if you pick up a 600 and put a 1.4, it's going to make it f5.6, which is manageable. But if you put up a 2x, it's going to make it f 8, which is definitely a problem in most of the situations in wildlife. So it's all about give and take in the gear. Decide which features you're ready to give up, and in return, what are you getting? Weight. Now, more focal length means more weight. A 600 mm will always be slightly heavier than a 400. So if weight is your concern, then consider picking up a 400. Also, it is less bulky, so it is more convenient to handhold in the field. However, if you shoot on a tripod or a beanbag most of the times, then you don't have to worry about the weight at all. Happily go for a 600 if the above points that I've shared with you make sense to you. Conclusion. I'm sure you know the conclusion over here. You need to figure out a few things, obviously. To summarize, if you shoot birds more, then pick up a 600 mm. Mammals more, then 400 would make sense. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't shoot birds with a 400 or mammals with a 600. I have done that myself multiple times, rather most of the time. Now, if you have to travel to lesser known places with shy animals, a 600 or even a little more focal length, an 800 would suffice. And if you are someone who visits the commercial parks more, where the animals are totally used to people and come really close to the cameras, then 400 mm is a great pick. Also, the kind of compositions you create play a huge role. Now, here is a small suggestion. If you're a beginner, I would highly recommend renting out both the focal lengths and taking them to your next upcoming trip. Use them over there and see what suits you more. There are times where you think that you're more of a person who would prefer shooting mammals more, and then you end up getting interested in the birding aspect, and vice versa. So it is very important that you understand your taste, your voice, your preference much more and earlier than when you invest in the lenses. Also, if you're an absolute beginner, then consider investing in lenses like a 200 600 or a 100 400. These lenses are extremely versatile and they give you a wide range of focal length to cover. So you can experiment, understand the kind of images you like to take, and then gradually invest further.